My company is called Payments Lab. Payments Lab, we help merchants, we help PSPs, we help acquirers to manage higher risk industries and verticals. Basically, for merchants, that means better strategies to sustainably manage their acquiring desires. That includes risk management, but also mid-management and a steady relationship with the banks. For PSPs and acquirers, that means getting reliable merchants and ensuring that their risks are controlled by somebody they trust, me in this case. And we make overall a very nice and stable working environment for all parties involved. At least that's the focus, and we've been successful so far. Payments Lab is a relatively small organization. I'm the founder, I run it, and we have 3 extra employees that help me out on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, I've been in payments personally for almost 6 years now. Payments Lab is a bit younger, I would say 2.5, but the company has been incorporated a couple of years ago. So if you come up with a new PSP and maybe you like the terms, it's always a matter of trust. We've had in the industry multiple cases of the big name banks going bust. We've had cases of merchants doing some unthinkable things and getting fined consequently. And so there's a lot of rumors out of that. And obviously everybody's looking for himself, herself, and they're very reluctant in the first stages to get things going. So when I find myself in a position whereas I need to have a certain bank and a certain merchant start working together, and they're good in principle on paper, everything works out, everything's neat and tidy, there still needs to be somebody who kind of delivers the trust in the initial stages, and that's usually me. I guess the most surprising thing for me is that people talk different languages while they still speak English. You say a word to a person from an acquirer, means completely different thing to him than it means to, let's say, a gaming operator. And I guess my work and where the business is booming is where you try to make the two worlds meet, make them understand each other, make sure nothing happens besides that. Like, let's say, reliable traffic for a merchant is something completely different than it is to an acquirer. So sometimes it's very hard to get a baseline on discussion. So it's not just the terminology, it's just a matter of perspective of reference. If you're a banking employee and you've been working with Spotify's, bookings.com and that kind of merchants, and then suddenly you're at IGB, and then talking about transactional approval rates with these guys is not very helpful, to say the least. I would say the key principle that is determinant to success between these two is predictability. So as a PSP or an acquirer straight away, PayFac in some cases, what you want is predictable traffic in terms of transactions, meaning volumes that you can put in a business plan for the quarter. That means predictable chargebacks. Every business has a natural level of chargebacks, but if you get traffic from some sources, it could be higher. So what they strive for is predictability. Obviously, there are some cases where things need to change, and that's where the second principle is important. It's transparency. So as a merchant, you know that something's going to change for the better or for the worse. You need to be very open with your partner. You need to be able to communicate, find a solution that accommodates you both. If it's something good, amazing. If it's something bad, let them help you go through it together. Data is extremely important. It's something that could be a difference between your business making it and not making it if transactions are a big part of the business. So, for the gaming merchants, a good example is a lot of them try to classify the traffic into 2 basic categories, which one of them is less risky and the other is more risky. It's a very blunt approach. A much better approach is whereas you could assign a probabilistic value to every single customer, and that's something that more complex merchants are doing, and they see much more return on their, let's say, acquisition costs rather than just this binary approach. Helping the merchants understand the data is important. Usually they do need to hire people to manage that. The data itself, when it's raw, it has a lot of bias. So it's important to not only understand the data, but to understand the system that it comes from. If, let's say, I try to take chargeback data out of one merchant and then out of the other merchant, whilst one of them had no mitigation strategies and the other one was restricting, transaction velocity on some bins, then those data would be uncomparable. So understanding the biases is very important. Once you have the data, once you understand the biases, building something out of it is pretty straightforward given our experience. Next issue that comes to mind is interpreting the data. So a lot of the risks, they're not instant. So when you want to see the results of your work, it takes you months before you can actually see the impact of what you have changed in the model or the strategy. And interpreting these results is something that requires a lot of patience, and patience is what I guess gaming people don't normally have. The best risk mitigation is prevention. So, even before the transaction happens, we like to put as many tools as possible onto there that help prevent this transaction from going bad. So again, I'd rather not do a transaction that I see a high probability of it being a refund or something. So with the larger merchant groups, we build anything starting from basic cohort rules to complex machine learning algorithms, whereas we analyze the traffic, we correlate it to the data we already have, and we give them a probabilistic approach. So what we see in the end is we cannot control every single transaction, but the end numbers are very manageable. So if we have a spike, then it's a manageable spike. The only thing we need to do is twist some of the gears into a more aggressive restriction protocol, and then we're good. That's the ideal case. That's where we get in the end with the merchants. When we start, it's more of a rule-based strategy that we have to employ. We do a lot of subscription business, and subscription business is very pertinent to what we call friendly or first-party fraud, whereas people would do chargebacks on their rebuild transactions 2, 3, 4 months into the subscription, even though the merchant hasn't actually done anything to warrant such behavior. So sometimes we see that these merchants, they operate under a certain threshold, and obviously need to be under 1% chargebacks, and then there is a fraud rate that you need to adhere to. So we've seen some merchants during the season when they bought some, let's say, questionable traffic. They've seen these numbers double, triple within months. So I was one of the first ones to see that in my dashboards with Corefy, for example, and we know right away that it's going to be a problem a couple of weeks later with the acquirer. So we go to the merchant, we see what the reason is. We try to analyze what kind of numbers should we expect by the end of the month, by the end of the quarter. We take steps together, as a consultancy group with the merchant to fight it, but we also understand that the next 2 months are going to be harsh. Yeah, I guess the next thing I do is I buy a ticket, I fly to the acquirer's office, and we try to kind of calm them down, explain that, so this might get in the risk monitoring program, but this is the reason. It's nothing bad or nothing that the merchant has done evilly on his part. So if you don't like it, we understand. This is what we're doing to negate the situation. If you can sustain it for a month, let's do it. If you can't, let's amicably part ways, whichever you guys decide. It paints a better picture rather than finding out as an acquirer that suddenly your chargeback rate has doubled for this merchant. And we've seen cases where this leads to meet closures. When we're transparent about it, usually we get to keep the meet, keep the relationship, and years later work successfully together. Orchestration is not something new. It's something that's required in this day and age for any reliable payment strategy. All the basics, routing rules, cascading, for anybody who's considering them at least middle-sized merchants, that's a necessity. Right now, they want to have ability to be flexible. They need to adapt to the changing behaviors of users, issuers, requires some time on weekly, sometimes even daily basis. If you look at the huge merchants, they already have thousands of people working on these simple tasks, simply managing the data, managing the performance. For somebody who's doing tens of millions per month, it's still a very important task at hand. It's important to have a tool that's reliable. So in many cases, it doesn't make sense to build anything too complex internally. Use something that's already tested in the industry that's reliable. Also have some flexibility in terms of getting new channels, putting new integrations in there. So ideally, when I approach these customers, I don't want to deal with the situation where they take months upon months to integrate some new solution. I like to put them on our solution through Corefy and have that integration either ready or a couple of weeks from being there. And then the tools are very useful and known to us quite well, so it's just easy to onboard new specialists on our side and show to the merchants how to use it. So yeah, I would say orchestration is essential. Within the orchestration strategies, one of the important things is routing and managing the channels that these merchants use. We like to give them new solutions. We like banks to get new merchants, PSPs to get new clients, and flexibility here is very important. Somebody might be keen to do it now, but usually if it's just a merchant working directly, it's a lot of technical work, integration time that needs to be put into there. When we manage to bring them onto our platform through Corefy, it's a much easier setup. It's already there, and if you need something new, it's a matter of usually a couple of weeks, as opposed to months upon months waiting for the merchant and usually having some errors when we launch. So it's just a much cleaner, easier process, saves a lot of time and energy. Favorite feature with Corefy? I would guess the support. It's very important when we have a question, when we have something that we don't understand, which happens, especially when it comes to data interpretation. The guys are always there to help us out.